Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Happy to be here with you, blessed to be with you this evening. Our telephone number, if you want to join us on our late night national town hall conversation, give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-Valdez. And I want to jump into a few things today. There's a lot going on. Trump is losing some of his patience with Vladimir Putin, president of Russia, and Zelensky, and the bloodiest war since World War II that's going on between them. He says Putin's crazy and he's playing with fire. We're going to get into that in a little bit. But he also made his demands known, saying no more NATO expansion, no more sanctions. And I don't know if that's going to fly or not. Trump does seem amenable to reducing sanctions and eliminating sanctions. We saw what he did with Syria, the new Syria and their new leader. So we'll see if this type of diplomacy is going to work. I don't know. This is a tough one, right? I think it's a case-by-case type of thing, but we'll get into that in a little bit with a Navy SEAL that's going to be joining us in a little bit. But I want to talk about why is there a new statue of Joseph Stalin in the Moscow subway? This is an interesting one. And there wasn't many new depictions of the Soviet dictator in the last 60 years. But as of late, they are now decorating Moscow's subway stations with his grill. Stalin's making a comeback. A new statue was unveiled by authorities this month showing Stalin gazing sagely into the distance, as reported by the New York Times, flanked by adoring workers and children holding out flowers to him, a replica of one that was removed in 1966 during a de-Stalinization campaign. So what's up with that, right? I'm wondering. Anyway, the sculpture is part of the gradual rehabilitation of a brutal leader, right? This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to bring him back to life, making Stalin great again in Russia seems to be what they're trying to do. So anyway, you know me, never been a fan of the Russians. I know there's a lot of friends of mine that are pro-Putin patriots, but not me. I understand. I don't think I'm being duped by the deep state into thinking that Russia is the bad guy. I think I was duped by the truth into thinking that Marxism is the bad guy. And those that hold on to Marxism, those that hold on to an all-powerful state, those are the people we don't want. I think ideally we always want to gravitate towards someone that is leaning away from centralized power and giving power back to the people. Now, I know some will argue and say, well, then why do you like this and why do you like that? And I'll say, listen, I don't know that we're going to get there overnight, but I can tell you that President Trump, in my opinion, has been one of the most people-focused presidents I've ever seen, right? I'm 47, so Reagan was the first president I saw, but I was a little kid. And the the subsequent Republican presidents, while there were things that I liked that they did, there were things that they did I didn't like. Ultimately, I think we need to get to somebody that is idealistic, and maybe Trump, right? Look at what Trump's doing with Doge. If that's not reducing the size of government, I don't know what is. But this is something massive, and you've got to keep chipping away at it, and it's not going to happen overnight. What did Trump try to do? He said, you know what, let's go after the low-hanging fruit here and try and abolish the Department of Education. What'd they do? They turned right around and said, nope, not at all. We're not doing that. We're not going to let you do it. So they're fighting that, and understood. I see what's going on. But come on. This is what we need. We need somebody who's not only going to make the moves to get it done, who's actually going to be allowed to do it, who's not going to be fought by the left within the government, right? The left within the Washington bureaucracy, the deep state. So anyway, just some thoughts on that came out of me talking about the Stalin statue. A couple other things I want to talk about tonight. The Sovereign Wealth Fund. I have big plans for the Sovereign Wealth Fund. And again, these are my plans, right? I didn't make it up. Trump is the one that initiated this, and I applaud him for it. And my hope is that this will become something that really makes money for our country, even possibly some spillover that will kick back to the people, offsetting the need and reliance on tax dollars, etc. Now, I understand that's pie in the sky thinking. I think Steve Jobs and others, but I remember Steve Jobs saying it, the people that are crazy enough to try and change the world might be able to, right? And I think that's key here, right? I think you've got to, if you think that you can reduce the size of government, if you think that you can make that type of difference, then hopefully you're crazy enough to try and pull it off. And I love that. This is why my vote has always been with El Trompito. Why? Because it's what we need. We need somebody who thinks, let's negotiate. Let's ask for this. And if, we don't get that, that's fine. At least we started high. And, we'll land somewhere more reasonable. That's okay. Right? Musk coming in saying we're going to try and eliminate $1.2 trillion in deficit spending and whatnot, reducing the debt by $1.2 trillion rather. When he says that, I don't sit there and say, if you come in at 1.1, shame on you. You are a loser. No, of course not. Right? I look at the billions and billions and billions of dollars, or as the president would say, billions and billions. Right? I look at all that money that's being cut and saved, and I think, man, I think we're in pretty good shape in America, right? We're headed in the right direction. And I'm not the only one that thinks that. There's a poll out. Majority of Americans say that America is on the, quote, right track for the first time in polling history. Looking at this from KATV, an ABC affiliate, Trump's approval rating hits new high as 50% of voters say America is on the right track. How about that? This new poll was released just yesterday, showing 50% of likely voters approve of President Trump's job performance, saying America's on the right track. It's for Rasmussen, right? This is good stuff. Rolling average of last night and prior 4 nights. Just in. Look at this. Fantastic. Good numbers. The number, according to Rasmussen, has his disapproval at 45%. The polling is the first time in the company's history that a majority believes the country is on the right track. Imagine that. Now, after, hold on, I'm reading you the next line here, and these ads are getting in the way. Unbelievable. The timing is impeccable. It's like the ads are from the deep state. Anyway, after convincing one of the polls, President Trump's approval rating has gone up and down with each decision, but now there appears to be optimism. That's like a lot of conjecture that was unnecessary in this article. Who's the editor here? Anyway, the president has had some recent wins, a trade deal with the UK aimed at creating a level playing field for American exporters. And, somebody called here then and said, this whole thing, the media, the White House lauded this as historic, but it's nothing more than what we've already done. Really? We've done that? They've taken our products? No, I think we've taken their products. It's unbelievable how people will distort the truth just to try and take away from El Trompito and the wins that he's making. Now, of course, I think Trump ran on 2 big things here, right? He ran on securing the border and fixing the mess made by Biden's disastrous economic decisions. Rolling back inflation, getting us back to a time and place of prosperity. Many people may have voted him for other things. I know there's a lot of people that wanted to see us drill, baby, drill and unleash America's energy dominance potential and to get to where we once were when we were energy dominant in Trump 1.0. But I don't think that was the majority of Americans. I think the majority of people said some form of border security, immigration. This is why all the Hispanics came out in record number. They were tired of it. Yes, there were a lot of people that did not want to see girls and boys in each other's sports and confusing girls with boys and labeling girls as boys and vice versa. And these issues all matter, right? But ultimately, it comes down to those two, I think, were the two main issues. And in terms of inflation, inflation seems to be going down month after month. There seems to be a lot of new foreign investment in the country. Super. And then the border, I think this one's open and shut, right? This is where we need to be with the border. The safest, most secure, lock-tight border we've got. Now, listen, I know I'm selling it hard here. If somebody gets through, I get it. These things are going to happen, but it's not going to be what it was. It's not going to be a wide open door. And I was critical of this term open borders when I first heard it because I said, look, it's not really open. People are sneaking in like crazy. They've handicapped the Border Patrol, but by no means is the border technically open. But then I saw the videos, and I saw members of our National Guard under the instructions from the Biden administration literally opening doors in chain link fences to allow people to come through, ushering them right into the country. Border Patrol agents that had effectively become travel agents, getting them on planes that were landing in New York in the middle of the night. There's no question that this was not just an open border, but it was a border that was not even under the control of the United States. At least one would think, right, that it wasn't under the control of the United States, because why would the United States allow that to happen? And I guess that's one of the bigger questions we'll always have. What was the purpose? And again, I've got my own speculation. Everybody has theirs. Well, trying to make the country look different. We want to have different voters. The Democrats are losing their base. Yada, yada. The cartels had dirt on Biden. The commies had dirt on Biden. You name it. It could be all of the above. Bottom line is, none of those reasons are good for America. So it comes as no surprise to me that Trump's approval ratings are going up. Makes a lot of sense. And it's a poll of likely voters, not registered voters, which I think is always the better of the two. So anyway, I want to talk about El Trumpito, because President Trump today, last night, maybe earlier today, expressing some frustration with Vladimir Putin, saying that he's just very, very dissatisfied with what's going on. I think going to the lengths of saying this is crazy and he's playing with fire. So I want to talk about some of the geopolitical things that are going on. I also want to talk about Secretary Hegseth, who is making headlines for eliminating even more wokeism from the United States military. I think it's a good thing. Recruitment is up. People seem to have a very positive outlook of the country, so positive that people are volunteering to serve in our volunteer military. And I'm going to get some reaction to that from a Navy SEAL that's joining us in a moment. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
I want to listen to you, Rich, all the time.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
No more distractions. No more electric tanks. No more gender confusion. No more climate change worship. We are laser focused on our mission of warfighting.
We will measure our success not only by the battles we win, but also by the wars we end and perhaps most importantly, the wars we never get into. It's called peace through strength.
That is a new ad that has been put out by the Pentagon. Again, touting the end of wokeness under the Trump administration, with Secretary Pete Hegseth saying no more gender confusion. And the Pentagon rolling out this riveting ad for Memorial Day weekend at the Coca-Cola 600 this Sunday. It's narrated by Secretary Hegseth himself from the Pentagon, and President Trump again echoed in there with the importance of ending the wars that we currently have and not getting into new ones. And again, this is a very interesting message, right, coming from the folks that train America's most elite warfighters. Peace through strength. So I want to talk about what that means for our military, what that means for the morale of the men and women in uniform. And, of course, then we'll pivot the conversation to what that means for some of the current conflicts that we're looking at geopolitically. And to do that, I want to bring in our guest. Our guest is a retired major. He's a Navy SEAL reserve officer, and you've seen him on television as a correspondent, and he's also the head of military investing at Siebert Financial. Major Kaj Larsen, welcome, sir.
Hey, Rich, great to be on. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. Glad to speak.
It's funny, Rich, too. I'm still adjusting to the title of major. You know, in the SEAL teams, I was lieutenant commander. Now I'm commanding a special operations unit in the state of Florida. So I've had to switch over to Army vernacular, and now it's major.
Very cool. And we'll talk about that as well, because I remember when there were some headlines over this group in Florida. And but before we do that, I want to talk about this ad, right? And the timing of the ad with respect to the holiday coming up, or, you know, when they released it on Sunday right before the holiday. And your opinion, you know, as somebody who served, you're plugged in with people, plugged in with Secretary Hegseth. I know that you guys were in the same training school together. What are some of your peers telling you about the new direction that our military is headed in?
Yeah, and I think the most important thing is that the United States military is the most lethal fighting force on the planet. I like to believe that I'm a member of the special operations community, which is the most lethal fighting force on the planet. The military is extraordinary. The men and women who serve in the military are extraordinary. So I don't actually think this is a new direction. If anything, it's the new old direction. And we did an incredible job of war fighting. I will say, as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan waned, you know, I first started my military career at the Naval Academy in the 90s, and that was peacetime military. And peacetime military often can kind of lose its way and lose its focus without that really clarifying principle of going to war and fighting. And I think you saw that happening in the last couple of years under the last administration as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan started to wane. You just saw all this frivolous stuff that it was focused on. And I think the secretary really has recalibrated that.
Well, Kaj Larsen, retired lieutenant commander, current major, I want to continue this conversation with you. I want to get your thoughts on that, as well as what you think is happening with Europe, with Putin making some demands and Trump firing back. Don't go anywhere, Major. We're coming right back. Amigos, I'm Rich Valdez.
Look at Rich Valdez. He's now a radio host, and he's a great radio host.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Today, President Trump claims Russia's Vladimir Putin is playing with fire in its war with Ukraine. Trump, who for months signaled to Russia a scaling back of U.S. support for Ukraine, wrote on social media today, quote, "What Putin doesn't realize is that if it weren't for me, lots of really bad things would have already happened to Russia. And I mean really bad." His criticism comes on the heels of Russia's largest drone attack yet, 900 launched in just 3 days, killing dozens of Ukrainians and injuring more than 100, according to Ukrainian officials.
I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all.
Putin has avoided criticizing Trump directly, instead suggesting the president is showing signs of, quote, emotional overload. Following Russia's latest attack, major allies, including Germany, France, and the U.S., lifted Ukraine's range restrictions, meaning they can now fire weapons farther into Russia.
So that is what's going on. That a report there from Fox. And I want to get some reaction to this because I think President Trump has been measured. He's been patient. He says he can end the war in 24 hours. And I really do believe that that's a possibility if he uses not peace through strength, but strength through strength. But I think he's been reluctant to do that. And for good reason, right? We don't want to spark a war with a nuclear power. And we want to bring peace, not more war. But, of course, there's more to discuss, and to do that, we're going to bring in retired Lieutenant Commander, Reserve Navy SEAL Officer Major Kaj Larsen. Welcome back, sir. Your thoughts on what's going on with Putin saying he wants to end the expansion of NATO, end all the sanctions, and maybe, we could end this war while bombing Zelensky.
Yeah, it does seem paradoxical, doesn't it? I mean, look, I think if we scale back that this is the ultimate end game for Putin, right? Containment of NATO expansion, a check on NATO, and these have always been Putin's strategic goals. I think he somewhat miscalculated with the level of resistance that he would encounter in Ukraine. And we've seen other superpowers, even ourselves, are not exempt from that kind of thinking when it comes to conflict, that we assume it's going to be easier than it actually is. I think the other component that's worth thinking about here is, while Putin does seem to have the upper hand tactically on what's happening on the ground in Ukraine, he's also put himself in a little bit of a political economic quagmire domestically and internally. The Russian military-industrial complex has ramped up massively for the war. It's essentially been like an incredible cash infusion into the Russian economy, including paying soldiers to man the front lines. And those wages have become almost a welfare system for different parts of Russia. So it's not actually that easy for Putin to scale down from the kind of economic stimulus that's funding the war in Ukraine. So that's another challenge to be overcome in actually getting to the peace table eventually.
That's interesting. So he's only getting money because he's at war, and not being at war would cost him, is in essence what you're saying.
He's stimulating the Russian economy through a massive expansion of the war efforts. And that is going to have to be scaled down at some point. If he scales that down too fastly right now, it's think of it like COVID stimulus or any of the other sort of government stimulus programs. And we've seen in our own country the economic consequences. And look, we can talk tactically what's happening on the ground. We can talk about President Trump's strident efforts to contain this conflict further than it actually is. But I think this is sort of an underlooked component of the Ukraine-Russia conflict.
No, I think you're spot on. This is, in effect, part of why the American people, I think, voted for Trump. They said no new wars, right? We don't want any more wars. We don't want these forever wars, because the United States and the military-industrial complex were doing the same thing. So, I guess it was part of the analysis that, like you said, I think was overlooked by many of us. I've never looked at it that way. I do know that he's making more bombs than anything. And, it's a point that you lose sight of because you're looking at how much firepower they're cranking out. Looks like Putin's prepared to be at war for a long time. You kind of, again, lose sight of the fact that that's actually stimulating their economy, and war is good for them.
Yeah, absolutely. There's entire towns and villages in Russia where the entire salary base is young men going off to fight in the Ukraine war as a component of the Russian army. And it's actually getting baked into the culture there, partially because they were losing so many men in the beginning. But that's an aside from some of the strategic questions that you talked about with President Trump's peace through strength, which is obviously a reflection of a Ronald Reagan policy. Sure. I think it's the right policy. It's the only policy that really has ever worked for us. I think President Trump and Secretary Hegseth understands that having a strong, well-respected, and sometimes feared U.S. military is a linchpin of American diplomacy.
Yeah, I would agree with that 100%. Folks, we're on with Kaj Larsen, Navy SEAL. And Kaj, I want to get your take here on, maybe putting your crystal ball to use. How do you see this ending for Russia? Do you see President Trump losing patience and saying, all right, look, we're doing it this way and getting tougher with them? Do you see him losing patience with the process and saying, you know what, go ahead, kill each other. I got things to do over here. Do you see a capitulation from Zelensky or maybe even from Putin?
Yeah. And, Rich, we may have spoken about this the other day. I was in Ukraine. I spent a lot of time boots on the ground there. And for the last 2 years, I have been saying, and I've been buoyed by the fact that I think my sentiments are shared by President Trump, is that, like, the war needs to end. It is such a colossal waste of human capital. And then when you're over there and you see all of the body bags and you see all of the death and all of the destruction, I've been saying for the last 2 years, they need to draw the line at the Dnipro River and call it a day, and at least call a ceasefire so we can start to figure out some of the bigger geostrategic issues. Unfortunately, Russia's made enough credible progress on the battlefield that isn't any longer a viable sort of peace strategy, and we have to kind of redraw the lines. The Dnipro River was a natural barrier. It's sort of a natural geographic barrier. It made sense. I think what happens next, in my best analysis, is that we have to apply economic, political, and even military levers on both, and by military levers I mean aid and support on both the Russian and the Ukrainian side, in order.
All right, folks, we were on with Kaj Larsen. I think we might have lost him for a second, but we're going to take a pause right here and come right back to finish this conversation and to learn a little bit about what he's doing to help veterans make money when they come back home. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
President, would you provide us an update on Russia and Ukraine as well?
Yeah, I'll give you an update. I'm not happy with what Putin's doing. He's killing a lot of people, and I don't know what the hell happened to Putin. I've known him a long time, always gotten along with him, but he's sending rockets into cities and killing people, and I don't like it at all. Okay?
Trump doesn't like it at all. Putin is acting up. They're erecting new statues and sculptures of Stalin in the subway in Moscow. I don't know if that's an FU to Americans. I don't know if that is to rally support amongst Stalinist loyalists, but that is what we have. We're on with Kaj Larsen, retired Navy SEAL. He's a major in the Florida State Guard now, and he's with us now. Kaj, you were making a point. I want you to be able to finish that thought, and I want to get your take on why they're erecting these statues of Stalin yet again, and then tell us about your work at Siebert.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the bottom line up front is that I think the United States is not anemic in this situation. We still have a lot of levers to pull diplomatically, military support, intelligence support. We have carrots and sticks that can be offered on both sides of the conflict in Russia-Ukraine. And my prediction is actually that we're going to get it done in the next 3 months. In the next 3 to 6 months, despite the fact that things look a little bleak right now, I think President Trump is going to get it done, along with Steve Witkoff, who's helping negotiate, General Kellogg, and I think that's going to be a good thing, not just for the United States, but for the world.
Yeah, really good point. Now, Kaj Larsen, what do you think this emergence of Stalin statues means? Does it mean anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, I just think that there's a nationalist resurgence that's a natural tendency in war. I mean, yes, they're incentivizing people economically to support the war in Ukraine, but this conflict, remember, was sold not as a war, but as a special military operation to the Russian people. And it's been going on a long time. If you go back to 2014 in the Donbass, you know, there's been a lot. This is actually a very long-standing conflict between Russia and Ukraine. And the Russian people ultimately bear the price of it, just like the American people bear the price of wars that we engage in. And at some point, they'll become weary of losing their sons in a faraway land. And so it's important, I think, for Putin to I think a lot of his power is vested in a strong national identity. And I think that's what you see going on there.
Yeah, I think that's probably right. And now, something we've talked about, but the audience doesn't really know about, and I think is a really not just interesting, but fantastic thing that goes on with the work that you do at Siebert Financial, where you're the head of military investing, is you help veterans to learn how to invest and become more financially literate so that when they come home and their heads all over the place trying to get acclimated with life again, they don't have to do it, for lack of a better word, being broke, right? They could do it with a few bucks in their pocket. Tell us more.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you know, Rich, you come from a military family. Your brother served in the Marine Corps, as did my father. So you're aware that when people transition off of active duty, whether they're combat veterans or non-combat veterans, it can be a tremendous adjustment. And, you know, as you and I have spoken about, in large part, the private wealth community has kind of left the military community behind. And I believe, and at Siebert, we believe that there's nobody kind of more deserving to participate in the spoils of the American system than those who have worn the cloth of the country and have put their lives on the line to defend it. So, you know, what I do is I try and bridge the wealth gap between the veteran community and the private sector, and I try and do that in large part through the knowledge gap, by closing the knowledge gap, helping educate veterans how to invest, how to grow their wealth, and I have a variety of tools to do it. But for me, the mission is to help lift up veterans and their families, obviously, from a financial perspective. The good news is there's a long tradition of veterans going from military to money, right? Your brother seems like he was an excellent example of that entrepreneurial spirit that we use to defend the country. We bring that back, just like the World War II veterans did, and built the greatest economic engine the world has ever seen.
Amen to that. Now, tell everybody how they could learn more about the work that you're doing and how they keep up to speed with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm available on all of the socials. It's at Kaj Larsen. Our military initiative at Siebert is called Siebert.Valor, and that's where we help not just military personnel, but first responders and law enforcement, build their wealth, become more financially stable, knowledgeable, and ultimately wealthier. We do that in a variety of ways, everything from self-directed investing to asset management. But first and foremost, we increase people's knowledge base. And so Siebert.com, Siebert.Valor are all of our websites. And people can always just reach out to me directly, because there's no greater purpose for me now than helping my fellow veterans walk the path that I did when I transitioned out of service.
Amen to that, brother. Kaj Larsen, folks, give him a follow, Kajlarsen. And, brother, you are a gentleman, a patriot, a scholar, and I'm glad you're here, man. God bless you. Thank you, sir.
An honor to be with you. Thank you.
You bet. And, amigos, your calls, thoughts, reactions are coming up right now. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S. No hair, no care, and live on the air, it's Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez taking your calls. Let's see who wants to weigh in. Let's go to Blake, Tyler, Texas, KLIF. Go right ahead, brother.
Rich, thank you for having me on. We're at a real important time here.
Yeah,
and I wanted to say that the president is being challenged by judicial overreach, and they're making rulings in the judicial branch that are contrary to every executive order the president's trying to call out, expecting that the president is supposed to just stop what he's doing, and when he's doing the will of the people that we elected him to do. From the extradition of the violent people here that came into the country illegally, and they want to stop that. They want to stop the tariffs that are going to help our economy with the more balanced trade, international trade, and the president's within his rights to do all that. And the judges think that they can just go ahead and obstruct it by making a ruling that would stop him from taking further action. And all he has to do is ignore the order. He has to ignore the orders. Or he has to ignore the ruling, because it's not an order, it's a judge's rulings. If he doesn't defy the rulings and go ahead and carry out his agenda, then the agenda won't happen, because we won't have an elected officer that's able to do what the will of the people. We'll have judicial bureaucrats that are run by a shadow government.
Yeah, well, what happens is if he ignores the order, then that's just the same as the courts ignoring the law. So ultimately what has to happen is if we have a constitutional system that we actually believe in, we have to let it play out, right? And we've got to let it get to the highest court in the land, and they're going to have to weigh in. The issue, and I agree with you. I don't disagree that they're using lawfare to get at Trump. I guess my disagreement or my view on this is really that we just have to try and speed the clock up to get them to the Supreme Court, because Trump fairly wins most of these big cases, right? They keep bringing new ones, but it doesn't mean that he's not winning the important ones. Just like he was able to continue to use the Alien Enemies Act and so many others that they keep fighting him on. Just today, Letitia James hit him with stopping tariffs. And some judge took the bait and said, sure, right? And this will happen at the district court level, and it'll work its way through until it makes its way to the Supreme Court, where they say, look, he is the executive branch. He's going to be allowed, and that's it. So I'm with you, man, and I'm just as frustrated as you are, but we've got to let it play out. Thanks for the call, Blake. Amigos, hasta la próxima. Take care. God bless. And good night, America. Stick around. There's more to come. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez, America's favorite late-night talk program, featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? I am Rich Valdez, Valdez with an S, at Rich Valdez on all of the social media. Your liberty-loving Latino amigo, happy to be here with you this Wednesday night. We're live, we're national. It is 7 minutes past the top of the hour, and I'd love to chat with you guys since we're live, and I'm sitting here waiting to talk to you. So give me a call, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ. I want to start off with a couple of things because there was a big story today about what Letitia James, the Attorney General of the state of New York, is touting as a big win for her because she decided to sue the Trump administration and got a three-panel court from the U.S. International Trade Court to side with her. Now, that's not that difficult. This is typically how their strategy works, right? They go for something that they know won't really work in the long run. Think of everything Jack Smith did. Think of so much of this lawfare, right? We're going to use this to get him out of office, to keep him out of office. We're going to impeach him. We're going to do this. They do whatever they can just to try and sully him, just to give him a black eye, to slow things down. But ultimately, I think they know it won't work, but they're hoping that it will. And then when it doesn't work, they go, well, it's all right. The damage is done, right? There's already been a million headlines, there's a million videos, a million this and that. People are convinced that you are the worst thing ever. Some percentage of people, I think the majority of people who invest the time to be informed patriots, they know a little bit more. And such is the case today. DailyMail.com, shame on them. Listen to this. You know, and I use this as a source every now and again, but Emily Gooden really editorializing here, in my opinion, right? Listen to the first sentence of the article with the title, Trump's tariffs dealt catastrophic blow as judge rules worldwide trade levies illegal. Catastrophic blow. Now, Ms. Gooden, senior White House correspondent for Daily Mail, I don't know that this is going to be a catastrophic blow, but here's the first sentence. President Donald Trump's global tariffs were declared illegal and blocked by a federal court on Wednesday in a massive blow to his administration. Now, you tell me, does that sound like a journalist who's trying to paint the picture of something that's fair and balanced? Or somebody who's trying to over the top get you to click on this article because of your own biases towards Trump or this topic? I'm going to go with B, because that's exactly what's happening. Now, you've never heard of this court, right? This is the Court of International Trade, a 3-judge panel in New York, responding to a lawsuit brought by the Attorney General of the state of New York. So a state attorney general bringing a lawsuit that says Trump can't do what he's doing for the country. I'll translate that for you. A state prosecutor is suing the president of the United States, saying that he can't do what he's doing. Where's the sense in this? All right, there really isn't any. I mean, there's a whole 50 states last I checked, and this being but one of them. Now, they're saying that this isn't legal. Now, I'm going to get into this a little bit more, but this is a flash in the pan. This is a blip. This is something that won't last very much longer, but they want to tout it as catastrophic blow. Why? Because they know that MSNBC and the Rachel Maddows of the world are going to see this and say, wow, this is great. And this will be all over the news today. And by tomorrow, people will be telling each other during their lunch break around the water cooler, hey, did you hear there's no more tariffs? Yeah. They're sending Trump back to jail now because of it. You know how the telephone game works. That's what they do. Anyway, listen to this report from Andrew Kraft at Fox.
And we're getting some breaking news regarding President Trump's sweeping tariff regime, tariff policies here. The Washington Post has it. Take a look at this. That the Court of International Trade ruled today that President Trump exceeded his authority in imposing tariffs on all imported goods. The president invoked a 1977 law that granted him emergency powers over the economy. So the ruling, this is from a 3-judge panel. This is a New York-based court. It's called the Court of International Trade. And as you know, it came after several lawsuits arguing Trump has exceeded his authority. It left U.S. trade policy dependent on his whims and unleashed economic chaos. So the court wrote this, referring to that law in 1977. It's known as the International Emergency Economic Powers Act. They wrote this, that the worldwide and retaliatory tariff orders exceed any authority granted to the president by IEEPA to regulate importation by means of tariffs.
So now what happens? Of course, the Trump administration is going to fire back. They're going to say that this court is exceeding its authority, that it doesn't have the right to tell the executive branch that's granted power under the Constitution, that's written into the Constitution. I'm going to look for this 3-judge panel. I'm going to look for the International Court of Trade in the Constitution. Hang on, this will be quick. It's not there. Why? Because they don't have authority over the executive branch. That's pretty simple. Now, they might argue that a case that may sound feasible to some, they might say, well, no. What happens here is that this whole tariff thing, the president's exceeding his authority. He's going to have to go to Congress and get, and do this by legislation. That's fine. You could say whatever you want to say, but he's doing it. Right. And they're going to try and now get a nationwide injunction. We were talking about that the other day, and why these things, these 3 judges shouldn't have the right to enjoin something across the country. Right. And that's something that's being argued right now before the Supreme Court. So I say that this is going to be a flash in the pan for Emily Gooden to get her numbers up with her Daily Mail piece, and anybody else who wants to, jump on this bandwagon for the next, day, week, or month until, it's overturned or a different opinion comes out from a different court that has a little more sense. That's going to say, look, this guy was elected by millions and millions and millions of Americans, and that is not going to be undone by this 3-panel court from New York, right? This 3-judge panel. Now, I understand how the law works to some degree as a layman. And my view on this is that it's going to have a couple of more iterations in court until it ultimately loses. And it's going to lose on its face, because on its face, it's a weak argument. That's my prediction. If I'm wrong, call me and make fun of me. But I'm usually pretty good at this type of thing. Now, talking about winning in court, El Trompito had a very nice win. Right? Remember when they said, Elon's stealing your Social Security? No, they shouldn't have access. They're trying to hack the Treasury, blah, blah. Again, Elon Musk, this guy that they've chosen to villainize like there's no tomorrow. This guy's had like top secret, serious level clearance for a long time. Why? Because he makes rockets for NASA and does all sorts of crazy stuff for the government. He's making brain chips. He's doing things that most other people don't do. He's got plenty of government contracts. So to think that he doesn't have the type of clearance that you and I have, we don't have that, right? He's got the top dog status. And the reason why? Because he's involved in that top dog stuff. And this is not me being a fan of his per se. This is me just calling it like it is. So they said he was stealing your Social Security. He was stealing your identity. The guy who invented PayPal and had banking records for everybody and their mama. This is the guy that they were choosing to say was going to steal everything. Well, a court weighing in on that today as well. Big win for Elon Musk and for El Trompito. Listen to this.
One of the first real dust-ups between Doge and a lot of federal government career employees took place at the Treasury Department in February, when a lot of the Elon Musk Group associates went into IT systems at the Treasury Department and accessed American sensitive financial data. That issue was the subject of a lot of legal wrangling, and this week we got some resolution there. Doge had been barred from accessing those systems. A federal judge in New York has now cleared 5 Doge people to get into those systems and do their work after they've gone through the proper vetting and training protocols that are required of any other Treasury employee who does have access to that data. This is obviously something that's been a big concern for cybersecurity experts, people from Doge kind of digging into systems and not going through the proper protocols. But But now they've been given the sign-off to do that. One of the people mentioned in the litigation, Sam Korkos, is now even the Treasury Department's chief information officer. DOJ isn't completely out of the woods yet. There are a couple of watchdog reports looking at what they've done, but for now they have clearance to continue doing whatever work they intend to do with the sensitive financial data of Americans.
Oh, look at that. I'll translate that for you. Trump won. Trump won. Right? And you know why he won? Because back in January, they said, oh, Elon's stealing this and they're stealing that. A bunch of 21-year-olds with laptops and blah, 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 right? Whatever they were choosing to say at the time. And again, I said the same thing I just said right now. This is the work of the executive branch. They're doing this lawfully. And that's the end of it. They go to court to waste time. They get a couple of sympathetic judges to continue to waste time. It eventually makes its way somewhere where, people say, I'm willing to risk my reputation once, but am I willing to do it twice? And you have to, you got to read the tea leaves. And finally, a judge says, all right, look, this has gone on long enough. We did what we could to resist. Now we're going to let them do what they got to do. Why? Because they were always allowed to do it. And that's the bottom line. And we're going to see that same type of victory. And here we are, May 28th, getting that victory that should have come in January. Such is the name of the game when you're dealing with the deep state in Washington. Anyway, enough on that stuff. That's kind of heavy, and it's not as funny as our next guest. Chrissie Mayr is going to be joining us. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for everything. I know you very well, and I listen, but I have a lot of people that listen, and they love your show, and I appreciate it very much.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
The job of the U.S. Armed Forces is not to host drag shows, to transform foreign cultures, but to spread democracy to everybody around the world at the point of a gun. The military's job is to dominate any foe and annihilate any threat to America anywhere, anytime, and any place.
That's President Trump talking about ending DEI in the military. And you've got Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth weighing in as well, saying no more pronouns, no more climate change, no more dudes in dresses, no more bleep. Listen to this.
No more pronouns. No more climate change obsession, no more emergency vaccine mandates, no more dudes in dresses. We're done with that.
So it seems like it's a new day in America where people got their heads screwed on right. So I wanted to get at the take of somebody who I think is hysterical. But brilliant in her own right, providing political analysis as well. Chrissie Mayr has been here before, and she's back. Chrissie, welcome back.
Hi, Rich. Good to be here again.
Thank you. And I was listening to some of your stand-up show and heard about some of your run-ins with Puerto Ricans. I was very enthused.
Yeah, well,
I'm Puerto Rican, by the way.
On the waiting list.
Yes, ma'am. Anyway, welcome back. And I want to talk about DEI, and we're going to talk about your tour and some of the other stuff that's going on in America. But when you hear the president and the Secretary of Defense talk about this, I would imagine that you feel somewhat encouraged by this, because this is the type of stuff you're talking about in your show.
It is encouraging for sure. It's his job to lead the country and set an example and kind of set the tone for everybody. Of course, it's not a quick fix. There's still academia to deal with. There's still maybe a little bit of lingering, corporate whiff of, I think they are taking the pronouns out, but, these things always take some time. But it's very encouraging to see Trump putting his foot down, almost like a daddy would. He's giving daddy energy that this country so desperately needs. Just like, all right, he's just kind of saying, wipe that makeup off, go to bed, stop being ridiculous. You've got school tomorrow.
I love that. Folks, breaking news, Chrissie Mayr calling President Trump daddy on our program. I love that. But yes, I think you're right? Taking that kind of father figure approach, saying, knock it off. And I think it's high time that we had something like that. It must have been for you really, I don't know what the word is, inspiring, right? Where you would have had no shortage of material with all the crazy that we've seen in the last couple of years with this particular topic.
Oh, for sure. It's really from COVID straight up until now. There's always something to talk about. There's always something ridiculous going on in the news, and if it's not something political, it's something like Disney adults. There's always these viral videos of these adults just like who have no kids, no lives. They're just obsessed with Disney World, and that's been getting under my skin lately for sure. But yeah, politics wise, there's always something. But I am very encouraged by what Trump has been doing lately, and it just seems like he's not letting the things stop him that may have held him back on his first term.
Right. Well, he's got nothing to lose, right? There's no re-election to come, so you're getting what you get, right, whether you get upset or not. Now, Chrissie, I want you to, I guess in a minute and a half, tell me how are things going? I know the last time we spoke, there was a little bit of cancel culture coming your way because you decided to say, that you weren't part of the leftist mob, and there's a price to pay with that. How's it going for you?
Oh, it's going fine. I mean, if you go on the road and talk to any group of people at any comedy club, people laugh at the same things they always have, which includes stuff that's a little politically incorrect, a little misogynist, a little racial, a little homophobic. People don't change. You don't really have control over what you find funny. It's just that the kind of the rhetoric and the temperature has gone down, kind of all around us. But it's interesting. You'll still see, household names kind of left-leaning comics say that they are afraid to discuss politics on stage or in their acts at all, like, Kathy Griffin or Nikki Glaser, to name a few. And I actually really like Nikki Glaser. She's really great at roast battling, and she's very accomplished and incredibly successful. But I was shocked to see her say just a couple months ago that she's so afraid to say anything political. Like these leftist comics think they'll be deported, or that they'll be sent to a gulag, and they can't be serious. They may just be kind of sort of signaling to one another. I don't actually believe for a second that Trump cares about anybody on stage telling jokes.
Yeah, I think you're right. Folks, we're on with Chrissie Mayr. She is a stand-up comedian, political satirist, and the host of the Chrissie Mayr podcast. And we're going to come right back and talk about her national DEI Hire tour, which was inspired by a viral tweet criticizing diversity, equity, inclusion in corporate culture. Plus, we're going to talk a little bit more about what's going on in her neck of the woods in the comedic field, and so much more. Plus, your thoughts, calls, and reactions as well. Keep it locked right here. It's me, Rich Valdez, Chrissie Mayr, 833-4-VALDEZ.
Across America to the liberty-loving Latino, Rich Valdez.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And you guys know I spent some time working with my guy. I like to call him O'Kizzle, my nizzle. He really goes by the name James O'Keefe, founder of Project Veritas and now O'Keefe Media Group. And his undercover people went undercover yet again, and they got some stuff from the people that were working with Biden that were spilling the beans on how much power everybody had because Joe Biden apparently didn't have any. Listen to this.
foundational question for me is like, how corrupt is the DNC if so many people knew, or few people knew about Biden, well, the president of the United States?
I mean, I think the fact of the matter is the DNC is always going to be like a campaign arm of the president, ultimately. The bigger issue was like the inner circle that was around Biden. That's it.
And I came straight to you and know.
Like Joe Biden's chief of staff, like had an enormous amount of power.
Joe Biden?
Joe Biden's chief of staff.
Jill Biden's chief of staff had an enormous amount of power. Now, if you're thinking that's some low-level staff or some little kid, well, he might be a little kid, but he's also David Hogg, the vice chair of the DNC, saying that the president's wife, Dr. Jill Biden, had a lot of power, and her chief of staff, Anthony Bernal, had even more power. I want to go to Chrissie Mayr on this because, Chrissie, I'd really like your thoughts on this whole weekend at Bernie's that we just survived with Joe Biden as president.
Yeah, they're done doing weekend at Biden's. You know, it only took 4 years, but they're finally wrapping it up. Yeah, the Biden cover-up is big news right now. The cancer is big news right now. They thought the cancer was going to be enough to distract everybody from his dementia. They're like, oh, look, they found a nodule. Great news. The Democrats are actually going to run the nodule for president in 2028. So,
Nodule 2028.
The nodule 2020. I think it'll be Nodule Harris 2028.
Gotta love that. Man, this is, I would think this gives you material for days because I'm not even a comedian and I find this stuff hysterical. What types of stuff are you doing with this?
It's just unbelievable. It's too good to be true sometimes. Obviously, there's so much to comment on as the Democrats scramble to try to find some kind of representation. The fact that they're actually considering Jasmine Crockett for anything or David Hogg, it's just what it's like. Yeah, maybe put Biden back. He might be a better option at this point.
He might lead the way.
A lot of people ask me because I have a 13-month-old baby right now. People are asking me like, oh, how's getting back into shape going? And I have not lost the baby weight yet at all. People said, oh, well, if you're breastfeeding, it'll come right off. It'll come right off, Chrissy. And here I am a year later. It has not come right off. I'm thinking, how many people do I have to breastfeed? You know, do I have to just start giving shots out to the front row? Do I have to start mixing up White Russians to people? But I will not be bringing the baby on tour with me. Turns out, you know, he can't sell merch. He can't drive. He can't get me a drink from the bar. So we're going to leave him at home this time. Not yet. We're going to train him.
You know, that's like a whole reality show in the making, all right? The little kid who grew up on a comedy tour. Folks, we're on with Chrissie Mayr, stand-up comedian, political satirist, and she's the host of Chrissie Mayr podcast. And I want to get your take on the reaction that you're getting from people on a number of things. And you tell me what those things are because you're the one that's on tour. Tell us a little bit about this DEI tour that you're on, your national tour, and what people are saying about it.
The title of the tour, and it's just very tongue in cheek. I'll be in Long Island in August, Plano, Texas in September, Massillon, Ohio in October, San Diego in October, and Phoenix in November. And it was the title of the tour was just inspired by like a little tweet. What I always like to do is I take every time I board a plane, Rich, I take a casual look inside the cockpit just to maybe see what color the elbows are. You know, I'm not the only one who does this, you know. And I took a picture. There happened to be a black guy in the cockpit, and I took a picture and tweeted it out. And I was like, look, guys, if I don't make it to Indiana, blame DEI. You were just kidding, just a joke. People got so upset, like I invented DEI. It really blew up. The tweet went viral. People are like, you know, death threats galore. They find you on every platform. They even found the pilot who was in the picture. He responded to the whole thing like, oh, I went to training. I'm qualified. Everyone's
That's
up in
great.
arms.
You should bring him on tour too.
That's such a great idea. He should open for me. That would be great. And people getting so upset. I'm like, I did not invent DEI. And it's like, you guys, you know, you voted for this to continue for years. And and that's the thing is the Democrats just sort of stepped in it. If they didn't want DEI to be something that defines you, they shouldn't have been voting for it for all these years. So, but I for 6 weeks I was getting comments like, "Oh, you're a woman, you're part of DEI too." Just like, yep, and I'll make fun of women too.
Equal opportunity hate around here. Folks, Chrissie Mayr is our guest. Now, Chrissie, I really am serious. I think that you should reach out to the pilot again and respond to whatever he tweeted at you and invite him on as a podcast guest. And I think you're on to something here, right? You'll get both the political crowd, the comedy crowd. This sounds like a match made in heaven.
I wonder if he'll give me a little set of wings like they do for the kids. Yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him. Maybe he'll forget that it's me.
Now, how difficult is it? I guess now this is really the nuts and bolts of it. How difficult is it to do a tour with a 1-year-old or 13-month-old that you have? Because when my kids were that little, I never wanted to leave them alone. So babysitting was like, even my mom, I didn't want to do it. I felt like I'd missed too much. And if you take them on the road, like you said, then, it's they don't know how to get cocktails.
Right. I haven't taken him on the road, but what I have done is because I'm still nursing the baby. And so if I'm on the road and I'm away for a day or two, you have to keep pumping. You have to keep the flow going, Rich. So I have to bring my pump with me on the road. And every 3-4 hours, I got to find a bathroom or, I don't know, a closet or duck into a corner somewhere and get the pump going. And then I have this portable, milk thermos that I have to slosh through every airport. And the TSA, they open it. They have to I'm like, I'm like, it's breast milk. What do you want to taste? What are we doing here? I swear they have to open it. They have to test they run this little test strip under we have to test the vapors. I'm like, what do you think? I'm just bringing like a liter of a White Russian. Like, do you think this is like liquor? I don't know what they think. They're very manhandling the breast milk a little too much. But it's worth it, I suppose. Or I could just drink, and do the old pump and dump. Or I could sell it. I'm sure I could sell it online for a pretty penny. Some guys are into that.
Oh, boy. Folks, if you want to buy Chrissie Mayr's thermos, you know where to go. Now, Chrissie, tell us a little bit about the gist of it. Are you mainly doing political satire on the National DEI Hire tour? Are you integrating some of your other parts of your routine, or is this all new stuff? What can we expect?
Yeah, it's some political stuff, and it's some, jokes about being a new mom, and some jokes about being kind of recently married. Like, I'm sure you've heard of, when a guy has to buy a gal an engagement ring, what is it? The guy has to save a certain amount of money or a certain amount of months. Remind me again.
I think it's 2 or 3 paychecks or something like that.
It's 3 months of whatever she would have made on OnlyFans. I believe
who can afford
that's
that?
The amount you have to go in for an engagement ring these days. So when I got mine, I was like, hey, it's a little small, don't you think? But it's a great ring. It's a beautiful ring. It's the only, ring I have that doesn't turn my finger green. But it's my reward for for not turning something else green, if you know what I'm saying. I'm trying to be appropriate here.
Security. I love it. Folks, we're on with Chrissie Mayr. She is on tour, the National DEI Tour. And tell everybody how they can buy tickets to the tour if it's not already sold out, how they can follow you on social, how they listen to the podcast. Give everybody the scoop.
Oh, sure. You can get tickets for the shows at my website, ChrissieMayr.com, M-A-Y-R. You can follow me on Twitter at Chrissie Mayr. That's ChrissieMayr. And, of course, I'm on Instagram, too, Chrissie Mayr Pod. If you want to leave me a death threat or something like that or a comment, you know where to find me, guys.
Outstanding. Give her a follow. She's terrific. She's hysterical, and she's a patriot. Chrissie, I want to thank you for being here, and I can't wait to play a couple of clips from the tour.
Thanks, Rich.
You bet. God bless. And amigos, your thoughts, calls, reactions, and so much more coming up right now. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
After the guest leaves every night and we're doing open phones, kind of at the heartbeat of America, and you sit there in this radio studio and suddenly you hear voices. Mobile, Dallas, New York, Miami. And there's kind of a conglomeration of America all in one room.
Call now, 833-4VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
All right, amigos, to the phones we go. Your thoughts, calls, and reactions. Let's go to, let's see. Can we go to line 4 to my buddy Jerome calling us from South Carolina, WTMA. Jerome, welcome, brother.
Yeah, I was just wondering, Rich, any more thugs, any more criminals, any more miscreants Trump wants to pardon? Because he's pardoned quite a few of them here lately, you know. Just like he said, when you're a celebrity, they let you get away with it. You can do whatever you want.
Now,
And
is
by the
this
way,
a racist comment because Trump is pardoning African American men and women? Are you trying to be a racist, Jerome?
Am I a racist? Trump, who lets people from South Africa into this country because he said they're being persecuted and murdered? Me? I'm the racist?
Well, it seems like you're taking exception with him letting black people out of jail, and I think that that's a good thing, like the First Step Act and what Alice Johnson is doing, and being the president who's overseen more releases of people who were incarcerated or wrongfully incarcerated or incarcerated for more time than they ought to have been. It's a huge boon to the black community, and I would have thought you would support that.
Why would I support criminals being allowed out of? Well, he let the January 6th people off too, and look what they did. So hey, what do you expect? You know?
Yeah, there you go. I think there's some more January 6th people that might be pardoned. I saw a report that one of the guys that was entrapped into saying that he was going to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer, apparently they might be pardoned too. What do you think about that?
You're gonna let them off too, trying to kill a state official? You're gonna let them off?
I don't think they're
too?
trying to kill her. I think they were kind of talked into doing this this kidnapping.
Into it. Who talked them into it?
The FBI.
Oh, the FBI told him, go kidnap Gretchen Whitmer.
Yeah,
Now,
that's exactly
what
why.
you fall off today?
Brother, this is exactly why they're thinking of giving him a pardon. They wouldn't just pardon him for any reason. One guy got off on that already. The other two, they said, were a little bit more complicit and didn't win in court the way the other guy did. But President Trump is looking at it. And I can tell you that I think there's a lot of things that the FBI has done. You know what? I'm going to write a little prescription for you. Dr. Valdez is recommending to you to watch a movie called White Boy Rick. It's about a guy that sold guns in Detroit, and look at what the FBI did to him. And then it's a true story, by the way. And you come back and you let me know what you think. Jerome calling us from Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA in the building tonight, coming heavy. Thank you for the call, my brother. I want to keep it right there with our finger on the pulse. And let's go to Stanley calling us from Fairfax, Virginia on WMAL. Go right ahead.
Last Wednesday evening, as you undoubtedly know, two visiting Israeli diplomats were killed or assassinated at a Jewish cultural center. Now, the person who did the killing, his last name is Latin. So my question, and I haven't heard it discussed for a lot of talk, was he a citizen or was...
Yeah, I believe he is a citizen. He was born in Chicago. His dad is a big veteran involved in a lot of veterans work. His father's also someone who served the United States military. And the father of this guy who did the killing, the murderer, the father was a guest at President Trump's joint address of Congress just 5-6 weeks ago. And he was a guest of a congressman from Chicago, where these guys are from. And I'm trying to get to the bottom of this. So I'm glad you brought this up, Stanley, because I believe tomorrow we're scheduled to have a Democrat alderman from Chicago on the program. Raymond Lopez has been invited to join us to see if he's going to tell us what he knows, to tell us the truth about what is going on with the other Democrats in Chicago and why they're out there killing Jews. And this is something I want to know, and I'm glad that you brought that up. Stanley in Fairfax, Virginia on WMAL. I do believe he's a citizen of the United States, though. Anyway, folks, we're coming right back. More calls from South Carolina. South Carolina's popping tonight. Robert's on the line. Larry's on the line. The line continues to ring with more calling in. 833-4-VALDEZ.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, this is the speed round, so use as little words as possible. Start with the bottom line up front. Use your last sentence first. Larry, Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA, go.
Yes, sir. I want to say that Trump is showing weakness to the world by acting more like Neville Chamberlain than he is as a leader for the Western nations. We should end the war in Ukraine.
Well, hold on a second. How is he being Neville Chamberlain if we're not at war with anybody?
We are essentially linked to the Western nations of NATO and to the future of Ukraine. That's just the way it is.
Right, but that's not even remotely similar to Neville Chamberlain. And I don't think it shows weakness as a failure to this country or its people. And I'll tell you why. Because, quite frankly, more Americans are staying alive. And look, I'm a hawkish guy that's never met a war I didn't love. But Trump is keeping people safe, right? He's trying to end the loss of life, not exacerbate the loss of life. Now, I agree with the sentiment that we need to be tough with Putin. And I think Trump is being tough with Putin. But what would you suggest, Larry, turning to Putin and saying, if you don't stop the war, I'm going to start a war with you?
No, I would say that I wouldn't tell him anything. I would coordinate with other Western nations, show leadership, get Lend-Lease for F-35s and F-16s, maybe a couple hundred of them, and go and sock it to them. Blow them away.
Exactly it, right? I just said that. You want him to attack, to use force to get him to stop killing these people. We're going to use more force. That may be an option, but this is definitely not something Trump ran on, right? Trump is not known for being hawkish. He's not a warmonger. He is probably the most pacifistic president I've seen in my lifetime, and I still like him. I typically favor a war hawk, but I think the true failure here is Putin. Definitely not Trump. Larry in Charleston, thanks for your call. Robert in Charleston, if you hang on, I'll get to you in the next hour. Amigos, we're going to talk about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. What does that look like for America? All of that and more calls from you all straight ahead. Don't go anywhere. I'm Rich Valdez.
Live from the city that never sleeps. 17 miles from Madison Square Garden, New York City. It's America at Night with Rich Valdez. America's favorite late night talk program featuring interesting guests from around the world and calls from across America. And now, here is your host, Rich Valdez.
Hi there, good evening, and what's up, America? It's Rich Valdez back for another hour. Thanks for joining me. Blessed to be here. Here's the phone number, 833-482-5337, 833-4-VALDEZ, keeping you company tonight. And if you want to join our late night national convo, I want to encourage you to do that. And I want to start off with some of the news we've already discussed, right? We've had some good discussion this evening with respect to President Trump expressing more frustration with Vladimir Putin, saying, hey, look, you're playing with fire, man. And I agree. Putin is getting aggressive here. And he's been aggressive. He's getting more aggressive. And I think his counterpart in Ukraine is birds of a feather flock together, right? He's just as aggressive. He's like, you're going to come at me, we're coming at you. And neither one of them willing to relent and make a deal, it seems. But they're scheduled to meet in, I think it's Istanbul, Turkey, if I'm not mistaken, in the days to come. So we'll see. We'll see how that goes. Again, I've got no predictions on this one. One of our guests, Larsen, retired Navy SEAL commander, he says he expects this to be over within 3 months. So wishful thinking there. I hope he's right. And we also had some really good conversation with the comedian Chrissie Mayr. But I want to also talk about the Sovereign Wealth Fund, because there's a lot to talk about there. A lot of people really excited about what that could mean for America. There's some difference of opinion on whether it will happen after the debt is paid, before the debt is paid. But difference of opinion is what this country literally was built on, right? Literally difference of opinion. And sometimes these differences were physical and aggressive, and oftentimes they were well thought out and well argued by, men informed by the Enlightenment. And I appreciate a good disagreement on things. I think groupthink is not for me, right? I don't want to be in the company of people that agree with everything I say all the time. I don't. I love it when somebody calls here and challenges my thinking and wants to argue and debate and push back and have a conversation, because it gives us a chance to really, act out what we believe. And it also gives us an opportunity to learn, to see if they explain to me why they feel the way they feel, then perhaps maybe I'll agree with them, right? I'm not immovable on anything except my faith in Jesus. Outside of that, let's have a conversation, or as Trump would say, let's make a deal. So I'm always open to that. And Elon Musk, he's 3 days away from saying goodbye to his Oval Office job as the chair of the Doge service. And he was on CBS Sunday morning, and he was talking about the big, beautiful bill. And he's not very happy with the big, beautiful bill. And he's disappointed to see that there's a massive spending bill. And listen, I'm not angry at him for that. I'm also not angry at Trump for promoting a big, beautiful bill. Now, you might say, well, how can you be both? Well, quite simply, I think that we are a multifaceted people that have different ways of looking at things, right? I think Trump needed to get this stuff done ASAP. We didn't have time to do it the other way, the right way, the better way, right? What Elon Musk is talking about, not having such a big bill where everything is thrown into it. I agree. We shouldn't do that. But if we don't do this now, we may never be able to do it, because Democrats are desperate to try and take control. And the second they get control, they're going to impeach Trump again. And if best case scenario, they try not to impeach him again, they're just going to make sure he never signs another piece of legislation. They will block, delay, and stall. That's all they can do, right? They're going to become the biggest obstructionists we've ever seen. So the mandate on the Republicans is one of speed, of getting things done very quickly so that we can try to save America. But here is Elon Musk talking on CBS regarding the big, beautiful bill.
You know, I was like disappointed to see the massive spending bill, frankly, which increases the budget deficit, not just decrease it, and undermines the work that the DOGE team is doing.
I actually thought that when this big, beautiful bill came along. I mean, like, everything he's done on DOGE gets wiped out in the first year.
I think a bill can be big or it can be beautiful, but I don't know if it can be both.
Elon Musk making the case that, look, we're here slashing, cutting, and the massive spending that went into that bill because everybody has to get paid off through a program, through this, through that, through whatever, ends up defeating the purpose, right? But I say no. I say you've gotten people in love with the idea of cutting, and you're solving several problems that need to be solved. So there is a both and in this solution, and it is politics, right? This is not our political philosophy. This is our political reality. And I think there's a big distinction there, and many will push back. But I only make these statements that I make because I worked in government, and I find it impossible to do what you want to do when you're in government. You have to do what you can get done, not what you always want to get done. Now, those are the best politicians ever, right? They're able to get what they want to get done because they're able to amass the power and persuade enough people to get them on board. And hence is the art of politics. Let's go to number 9.
Elon Musk in a television interview criticized the one big, beautiful bill, saying he was disappointed it didn't cut enough, essentially, that it undercut the DOGE efforts. What's your reaction to that?
Well, the reaction's a lot of things. Number one, we have to get a lot of votes. We can't be cutting. We need to get a lot of support, and we have a lot of support. We had to get it through the House. The House was, we have no Democrats. If it's up to the Democrats, they'll take the 65% increase. If that doesn't get approved, this country is going to have a 65% increase in taxes and lots of other problems, big problems, almost bigger than that. But we'll have a 65% increase as opposed to the largest tax cut in the history of our country. We will be negotiating that bill, and I'm not happy about certain aspects of it, but I'm thrilled by other aspects of it. That's the way they go. It's very big. It's the big, beautiful bill, but the beautiful is because of all of the things we have. The biggest thing being, I would say, the level of tax cutting that we're going to be doing. We're going to make people really be able to. We'll have the lowest tax rate we've ever had in the history of our country, and tremendous amounts of benefit are going to the middle-income people of our country, low and middle-income people of our country. So we're going to see what happens because the Senate, as you know, is negotiating with us, and they have to then go back to the House, and, it's got a way to go.
That's President Trump's response. And again, one I also agree with. I think Trump would also like to slash and cut and burn and get rid of the Department of Ed and do a lot of things. However, there's the reality of the haters on the left and their use of the courts to push back on these things. There's the reality of everybody has a district that they live in. And in order to get this many Congress people on board for a bill this quickly and this effectively, what do you got to do? You got to bribe them, right? You got to make sure that everybody's got to wet their beak. There's got to be something in it for everybody. It's a win-win across the board. Otherwise, it's an epic fail. And that, again, is the reality of politics. Now, it may not always be that way. The more power you amass, the less deals you have to cut. But that's the reality of where we are today. Now, where we might be in a couple of months may be better. And where we might be when it's time for the midterms needs to be better so that we can hold on to this power and keep moving this agenda forward. Otherwise, it stops there, and then the Democrats begin to obstruct. So you got to pick and choose your battles in this stuff. And I think I salute Elon for his work in DOGE and for everything he's done. God bless him. He's a patriot. And same goes for Trump, doing what he's got to do in, doing the possible in an impossible situation oftentimes. Anyway, Sovereign Wealth Fund. Trump and Lutnick don't see eye to eye, But we're going to talk about what that looks like for America and so much more when we return. Don't go anywhere.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
By the way, your ratings are up. Congratulations. I had somebody. It's always nice to check. I like to see, even if they're friends, I like to see how are they doing. Are people listening, right? But right. You're doing great.
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
Sir, on the Sovereign Wealth Fund, your proposal for the Sovereign Wealth Fund?
That we're planning on doing? Yeah. Well, look, Howard likes the idea. I'm less, I want to really make a lot of money, pay off debt, and just get it, and then you do it fund, you know. These people have no debt. It's nice to have a fund. I say to Howard, we're a little early because we have debt, and really, it sounds like a lot, but relative to the kind of income and everything that we have, it's not really that much, but it's still a lot, and I'd rather pay the debt off and then do the fund after the debt's paid off.
That's President Trump just 2 weeks ago in Doha, Qatar, talking about when he would like to launch the Sovereign Wealth Fund and his differences with Secretary Lutnick. Of course, Secretary Lutnick having a different view of the Sovereign Wealth Fund, making these comments at the signing of the executive order earlier this year on February 3rd. This is Secretary Lutnick. Check this out.
The extraordinary size and scale of the U.S. government and the business it does with companies should create value for American citizens. If we are going to buy 2 billion COVID vaccines, maybe we should have some warrants and some equity in these companies and have that grow for the help of the American people. So I bring all these things together. I think Scott and I will create an amazing sovereign wealth fund for you, sir.
That again, Secretary Howard Lutnick. And I want to get some reaction to this and talk about what a sovereign wealth fund will look like for this country and whether it happens before or after paying off the debt with Scott Powell. He is a senior fellow at the Discovery Institute, author of Rediscovering America. Scott Powell, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be with you and your audience.
Likewise, sir. Thanks for being here. And when you hear President Trump's comments in Doha just a couple of weeks ago regarding waiting until the debt is paid off and I guess the differing opinions that you have between some of the cabinet secretaries, to me, I guess I'm fine with it either way. But your thoughts on this, and is this a deal breaker? Does this put everything to the back burner because they don't agree on when to launch the fund?
Well, I think first of all you have to have a way to pay off the debt. I don't see a way to pay off our debt on the various trajectories that we have. The fact is that we're spending more money than we're taking in every year, and a lot of the DOGE cuts are now may not be carried out. But the reality is that we are spending more than we're taking in. Our deficit continues, and it continues to add to the debt, so that we're really on a trajectory this year of adding $2 trillion to the debt. So how do we pay off this debt if that's if the dynamics of our cash flow, if you will, is negative? You can't just pay off the debt. I mean, that's very wishful thinking. I think that the Sovereign Wealth Fund, what it can do is monetize assets that we have and offset this debt. But I think the debt is going to continue to be with us for many years to come. If we could get to a balanced budget, then the debt would level out. In other words, It wouldn't keep growing. I mean, right now, debt has been growing every year for decades, really. I mean, the last time we had a surplus was a couple of years, the small surpluses in the Clinton administration.
Yeah, in the 90s.
That's 25, 28 years ago.
My thought here is that we don't necessarily need to get to a place where we're zero debt, where we have no debt. but that we get to a place where we have good GDP, the debt is under control. And I always say I've never met a billionaire that had no debt, right? So it makes sense that, not that we should have debt, but that we can have debt and still have growth.
Oh, absolutely. No, absolutely. But we, the way the debt traditionally gets measured, the health of a nation's balance sheet, if you will, its finances, its assets and liabilities. You take the debt, the national debt, relative to the GDP, and right now, debt in the numerator, GDP in the denominator. Right now, we have, nearly 37 trillion in debt in the numerator, and we have. In the denominator, we have, or I guess it'd be the other way around. But we have more debt than we do GDP by about 25, 26% more debt than we have GDP. So that's not a healthy ratio. A healthy ratio is below 100, where you have less than 100% debt to GDP.
So ultimately, do you think, and I guess make this a short answer because we got to hit a pause, we'll come back and elaborate, but do you think that the Sovereign Wealth Fund is then the tool or at least a spoke in the wheel to eliminating the debt or reducing the debt?
Oh, I think so, because there's a lot of creative things that one can do with a sovereign debt fund. I mean, first of all, it can sort of change the perspective that we have about managing public land. Right now, public land is off limits. It's off limits for logging, pretty much, for mining, for drilling for oil and gas. They're off limits. That's 28% of the territory in America. That's a big number. It is, millions of acres that is just off limits to development. And I think if we can identify that we have resources in these public lands, and I'm not saying we should go into, the national parks, Yellowstone or any other national park, and be, trying to extract resources out of those parks. But there's a lot of land. There's a lot of rich resources in publicly held lands, and we should monetize those resources.
All right, Scott Powell, hold it right there. We're going to come right back and elaborate on those thoughts. Amigos, it's Rich Valdez. We're talking about the Sovereign Wealth Fund. Plus, we're taking your calls and thoughts and reactions. 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. Keep it locked right here. I'm Rich Valdez.
That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
It's a very exciting event. We're going to have a sovereign wealth fund, which we've never had. We have a lot of things that create wealth, and you're seeing that over the last 2 weeks. I think we've created more wealth. Other people have created de-wealth. The people, my predecessors, we're creating a lot of wealth.
That's President Trump again at the signing of the executive order to create a sovereign wealth fund earlier this year. And I want to continue our discussion with Discovery Institute Senior Fellow Scott Powell, author of Rediscovering America. And Scott Powell, before we left off, you indicated that you agree with Secretary Lutnick that the sovereign wealth fund would be a great way to help reduce the debt. And we probably should get that started before paying the debt, because you don't see many avenues to pay off the debt given the current spending levels, which is a fair point. So you were talking about getting into federal land and utilizing some of those resources. Tell us more.
Well, it's I think it would be a step in the right direction to explore public lands with a mind to identifying resources, quantifiable if possible, and now we have all kinds of technologies. Only 40 years ago, there was a belief in the public mind, policymakers as well as just generally, people recognized that, or they believed that oil was finite. That we had peak oil, and that oil was going to run out, and we might have 50 more years of oil and gas. Well, then what happened? Well, it isn't just Silicon Valley that is the sort of the center of technology. It turns out that oil and gas was revolutionized through technology, the development of horizontal drilling and fracking technologies. They can drill down now, 5,000-6,000 feet, and then curve the drill and go sideways through shale for another 2 or 3 miles. Can you believe that? It's an incredible feat. I mean, if you had told that to anyone 50 years ago, they'd say, "No, you can't do that. There's no way you can drill down and curve the drill shaft to go to go laterally. It was an impossibility." But we're doing it all the time now, and the amount of oil and gas now that is recoverable has exploded. We're now the Saudi Arabia of the world in both oil and gas. We have more than any other country in the world.
Well, this is huge.
It is huge. And Trump, it was the first year of actually being energy independent and exporting oil and gas in a significant way was 2018, Trump's first term. And there's more to come. I mean, we
right. Well, and I think it's worthy of note that the reason that came to an end was a lot of legal action against the Trump administration, Trump 1.0, of the left and their climate policies, saying you're prostituting the land, you're destroying America, yada yada yada, and you can't do that. And then enter the 4 years of Biden, putting everything to a halt, kind of puts us behind the 8 ball. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, we were on a very positive path. Look, there's no such thing as an energy source which is going to satisfy everyone. I frankly do not find that our landscape littered with windmills is very attractive. I don't really think windmills add to the scenic nature of our country. Nor do I feel that fields of solar panels give me warm and fuzzy feelings. I don't really like them, not only because of how they look, how they deface, Mother Earth, but they're also, they're not reliable. The sun doesn't always shine, the wind doesn't always blow, so it's not really base power. It's not reliable energy, and it's more expensive. So, frankly speaking, being an economist, I always want to go for, the low cost that delivers the value we need, and it is really not wind and solar, coal, oil and gas. I mean, we don't burn a lot of oil to generate electric power, but we do. Coal is very useful, and natural gas is excellent. We have a ton of natural gas. All of this should be used to give us the base energy that we need, the energy on demand. Wind and solar are not energy on demand. They're only on demand when
the wind blows and when the sun shines.
That's right.
Now, Scott Powell, I want to ask you a question about your thoughts on the attack from the left, saying that Trump is now recklessly firing park rangers and pushing for drastic budget cuts to eventually sell off our public lands, with Secretary Burgum calling them national assets. Now, I agree that they're national assets, and I don't think Trump wants to sell off national property per se. Like he's not going to sell you, an oil field or something. But other countries do lease these things.
That's right. I mean, there's different ways. I mean, the land could be held by the government and then leased, to companies that could properly develop the resources there. That's an option. Another option is make a deal where in any oil and gas that is brought up on public lands that there's a royalty paid on it, and it might be a debt reduction royalty fund. In other words, all those royalties go to paying down the deficit. I think that would be a constructive approach to managing public lands. But just having land for the sake of land, I think we have enough national parks. Maybe you add a few more. I don't know. I think most of the national parks, are they're a great addition to the American people, to tourism, and so forth. But we have all this other land that is just not being utilized at all. Some of it's used for grazing, and that's a public good.
Yeah.
But it turns out you can combine grazing with oil development. As a matter of fact, the polar bears they love the pipelines in Alaska because they're warm, and the fish love the oil derricks out in the Gulf of Mexico because they're drawn to underwater things like that. So nature gets along well with technology when we really look at it. Technology done right does not destroy life. It facilitates resources that we need.
Now, Scott Powell, let me ask you, what are your thoughts on the trajectory here of the Sovereign Wealth Fund? Where do you think it actually goes?
Well, first it has to get established, and then it needs to be funded with assets. We don't even know what the rare earth material.
Right.
We don't know the quantity of them, and but take those out of the equation for now. The United States has oil and natural gas reserves at about $19.4 trillion, almost $20 trillion. And that number probably grows every year because they keep finding more. It's just amazing what we're finding. And there's new theories in the among scientists. In the old days, it was these are fossil fuels. Oil came about as a result of the decomposition of organic matter. They typically pointed to dinosaurs. When the dinosaurs died, they decomposed and created oil and gas. There's a whole school of science now that really believes that oil and gas are naturally developed by the structure of the earth. In other words, oil and gas replenishes itself through the processes, of pressure below the earth. So that's quite amazing to think that maybe it'll never really run out. I don't know. I'm not
right.
a scientist.
Yeah, I don't think any of us know. But I'm not going to play the game that they play on the left, saying it's going to run out. It's going to run out. Don't use it. That part just doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well, they've been crying wolf for so many years on so many different things. They've been wrong on them all, haven't they?
Yeah. That dates back to before I was born 47 years ago. Scott Powell, tell everybody how they can find more about you and your book and how to find you.
Well, you're very kind. Well, I think the book is really timely, and I may have a new one for the 250th anniversary of the country. But Rediscovering America was written 3 years ago, and what I set out to do was to write a short history of the key periods in American history and explain why they happened, and look at the factors that are not just physical factors, the spiritual factors, God's hand behind America. We can all acknowledge that Plymouth colony was established by the Pilgrims. It came about as a result of people wanting to leave the old world of Great Britain and Holland and practice their faith unfettered, freely, as they saw fit. And the New World beckoned them, and they came. And we ultimately had, through the 1600s and into the 1700s, we had our last colonies formed. They were all Christian colonies. All 13 colonies were Christian colonies. And after the Declaration of Independence, the colonies became states, and the state charters of every one of our states makes reference and gives gratitude to God for so much. And so this is the history of America. And for us to discount God's hand in American history is foolish. I mean, we have flourished when we've been more godly, and we have been declining since we've driven God out of our culture. I mean, there's no doubt that the latter half of the 20th century, we've really taken steps that make our country almost unrecognizable for really old people that have a memory of the 50s and even the 40s. They go, "What? This is not the same country that it was," and everybody pays a price for it, because when Christianity is the religion of forgiveness and love, and when you strip that out of culture, things can get kind of coarse and uncivil, and we're really passing through it. The period we're in right now, I don't think we've had more ungovernability than any other time in our history. I mean, these rogue judges that are stopping Trump, and it's crazy. But this is what happens when you radically change your culture and you drive God out of the culture. People go kind of crazy.
Scott Powell, I think you're 100% right there. And I think we got to have you back to talk about that specifically, driving out God from our culture and how radical that is and the radical results we get from it. Folks, please follow Scott Powell. Make sure you get a copy of his book. And, Scott, I want to thank you for being with us. You're a gentleman, a scholar, and a patriot, sir.
Okay, wonderful. Let's do it again.
Yes, sir. Godspeed. And, amigos, have to take a pause here, but we're coming right back with your calls and more straight ahead.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez. Call now, 833-4-VALDEZ. That's 833-482-5337. 833-4-VALDEZ. That's Valdez with an S.
You would be excellent in a diplomatic arena or press secretary. That's because you know how to talk to people and kind of put them down a little bit without them even getting upset about it,
America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. Rich Valdez. We're going to do a couple of rounds of the speed round here. I want to go to Robert calling us from Charleston, South Carolina, WTMA. Robert, go right ahead, sir.
Yes, Rich. I just wanted to try to explain to you that Vladimir Putin has no specific end time. What he's going to do, he's going to string us along and string us along and string us along because he knows he can't lose, basically. He can only win. So what he'll do is he'll say, I'm thinking about it, we're planning about it, we're going to talk about it, but in the meantime, he's going to pound really hard, and he's going to get as much as he can, and he's going to keep doing that and doing that and doing that and stringing us along. And he knows that there'll be a certain point at which the West will give up. The West will have, as they say in German, die Nase voll. In other words, they'll be sick of it. They'll just say, we just want out of there. We really don't care what happens anymore. Just get us out of there. And then he wins.
Can you think of an example in history where that happened?
Yes, in Afghanistan, absolutely.
But this is an example, right, that didn't happen necessarily under Trump. I think when Trump was in office, the first thing he cited was Afghanistan, saying that we shouldn't do that, we shouldn't be there. And this was a war that we were intimately involved in. We were there. This is a war that we're not in. Right, so this is not ours to lose, but I understand the implication that there's a leadership requirement of the United States to kind of put out this fire. So I think that there really isn't an instance where these people kind of waited us out. But I do agree with you that Putin is definitely doing a war of attrition here with the Ukrainians, saying, look, the term they use is the meat grinder, and keep throwing people into the meat grinder until the Ukrainians give up, I do believe is part of the strategy. Robert, thanks for the call. Shout out to WTMA in South Carolina. Paul, Globe, Arizona, KRVN. Go right ahead, sir.
Hey, I love your show, and I voted for Trump. I'm telling you, he's fallen flat on his face as a international leader when he makes a promise that he'll end the war in 24 hours. And then on May 8th, he makes a really dumb statement by claiming that it was the United States and minimizing the fact that Russia did 90% of the defeating of Germany in Europe. And this is right before he's going to go in and negotiate with Putin. Do you know how uneducated he looked? This guy needs to go back and get a history book, because any student.
I don't know that. I mean, you're entitled to your criticism. I don't know that anybody's been paying attention to the second part of your comment. I know that the first part of the comment, it's pretty heavy, right? You're saying that Trump is falling on his face, but again, I'll say the same thing here. For Trump to win here, all he has to do is say no mas. The United States will not pay for this anymore. Ukraine, you're on your own. I don't want him to do that. I don't think that that's the right thing to do. But that's ultimately how the United States wins, right? We stop spending. Now, I think the best win here is for American leadership to bring these parties to the table and put an end to this, or for American leadership to flex a little bit of muscle to get these people to stop their war, right? Or the Trumpian model, which would be to get these parties to see a bigger, brighter future where there's a deal. However, I think that both of these people, I think Zelensky would be all in for a deal, but for the fact that I think he'd rather die than capitulate to the Russians, just as a Ukrainian. And I think the same is true on the other side. And when you have these kind of mortal enemies here, I think that kind of clouds their vision on coming to a deal, because they're not capitalists like Americans are in most cases. So they don't care about winning financially and having a deal and having prosperity and peace. They really want the carnage and they want to win. And I think this is what Trump is up against here. So I don't think he's failing. I think he's failed in trying to get them to the table and to be civil. But this isn't really on him, right? Saying he's going to end the war in 24 hours is not something that I think anybody ever really took seriously like that. I mean, I think they understood this to be we're going to work very quickly to get this done quickly. And yeah, I think we're all somewhat surprised that it didn't happen as quickly as it did. But that doesn't negate all of the other major foreign policy wins that he's had, that I think it would be reckless to discard those victories in light of just looking at this one. Paul, thanks for the call. Amigos, coming right back.
This is America at Night with Rich Valdez.
All right, amigos, welcome back. And we've got calls from Canada, calls from Wisconsin, but not enough time for either. So I can say the Japanese are in trouble in their economy, and this has implications across all bond markets, but is not an indictment on this administration. I can just say, hang in there. Folks, I'm Rich Valdez. Hasta la próxima.